Imagine standing witness to a moment that altered the course of human history, one so profound that the earth itself reacted. At midday, an unnatural darkness swept over the land, silencing even the most confident voices in the crowd. Moments later, the ground trembled violently, cracks forming in the earth as people stumbled in fear. These events weren't mere coincidences. The man they had crucified, mocked and dismissed, was not just another troublemaker, he was the Son of God. The crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth is one of the most significant events in human history, both theologically and emotionally and culturally. On the surface, it seemed like another Roman execution, a cruel, public spectacle designed to maintain control and silence dissent. But this execution was unlike any other. The death of a man was the culmination of a divine plan, revealed by clear signs. Those who witnessed it understood its significance. Jesus had been a polarizing figure, hailed by many as the Messiah, but feared and despised by those in power. His teachings challenged societal norms, his miracles disrupted established authority, and his claim to be the Son of God enraged the religious elite. The Roman authorities saw his arrest, trial, and execution as a resolution to a growing threat. The Roman authorities wanted order. The Jewish leaders sought to protect their influence. Together, they orchestrated his death, convinced it would restore stability. However, as Jesus hung on the cross, extraordinary events began to unfold. Darkness fell over the land in the middle of the day, a cosmic sign that defied natural explanation. Witnesses described it as oppressive, almost tangible. The temple veil, a massive curtain separating the Holy of Holies from the rest of the temple, tore from top to bottom. This was no accident. The veil represented the division between God and humanity, and its destruction symbolized a monumental shift in spiritual access. The realization hit hardest when the Roman centurion, a man hardened by years of executions, looked up at the lifeless body of Jesus and uttered, "Surely this man was the Son of God." These words were more than an acknowledgement. They were a confession, a recognition of something divine that even the brutal reality of crucifixion could not suppress. The aftermath was equally profound. Those who had mocked Jesus now stood paralyzed by fear. Religious leaders questioned the decisions that had seemed so certain hours earlier. And his disciples, though consumed by grief, began to see the pieces of his teachings fall into place, giving way to a burgeoning sense of hope. To fully understand its weight, we must revisit the day itself. Around 33 AD, on a spring Friday, Golgotha, the place of the skull just outside Jerusalem, became the site of Jesus' crucifixion. Roman crucifixion was a brutal form of execution intended to humiliate and deter dissent. The process was agonizing, dragging out the condemned's suffering for hours or even days. Even in the midst of this horror, the events that transpired during Jesus' crucifixion were beyond comprehension. At around noon, as Jesus hung on the cross, the sky inexplicably darkened. This was not a passing storm or a natural eclipse. Eclipses do not last for hours. Eyewitnesses described an oppressive, all-encompassing darkness that lasted until 3 p.m. The Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke record this eerie phenomenon, and external sources also reference it. Julius Africanus cited Roman historian Thallus in an early account, who attempted to explain it as a solar eclipse, but his reasoning did not align with known astronomical events of the time. The darkness symbolized more than atmospheric disturbance. It represented the world's spiritual state at that moment. In Jewish tradition, darkness often signified divine judgment or mourning. It was as if creation itself was grieving the death of its creator. For the crowd gathered at Golgotha, what started as jeers and mocking fell into silence, replaced by an unnerving realization that something monumental was happening. As Jesus took his final breath, the earth trembled violently. The Gospel of Matthew describes a powerful earthquake that split rocks and opened tombs, further intensifying the terror of those present. Although earthquakes were common in the area, their timing and severity made this event unusual. For the Roman centurion and the soldiers standing guard, it was the final sign that shattered their skepticism. Perhaps the most significant event was the tearing of the temple veil, an act laden with spiritual meaning. The veil, measuring 60 feet tall and several inches thick, hung in the Jerusalem temple, separating the Holy of Holies, the innermost sanctuary where God's presence was believed to dwell, from the rest of the temple. Only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies, and only once a year on the Day of Atonement. For the religious leaders who had sought to eliminate Jesus, this was a terrifying sign. The veil was not just a physical object, it represented the structure of their authority. Its destruction was a declaration that their control over spiritual access had ended. Many began to question whether their condemnation of him had been a catastrophic mistake. The combined effect of these events, darkness, earthquake, and the torn veil, was undeniable. Those who had mocked Jesus moments earlier now stood frozen in fear. For the soldiers, the centurion's declaration carried a truth. They had executed not just a man, but someone connected to the divine. For the crowd, this was a moment of reckoning. The realization that they had participated in the death of the Son of God sent waves of guilt and terror through their hearts. The Jewish leaders, too, faced a reality. They had orchestrated the crucifixion, believing it would secure their power and eliminate a threat. Instead, they faced undeniable signs that confirmed Jesus' true identity. The fear of divine retribution began to gnaw at their confidence. People often misunderstand the concept of sin. It's not just about breaking rules or committing visible wrongs. It's about a deeper issue, the separation of humanity from God. Sin is anything that disrupts the harmony between us and the divine, a rebellion against the very Creator who gave us life. At its core, sin is a condition, not just an action. It's the self-centeredness that leads us to prioritize our desires over God's will. The religious leaders, blinded by their own self-interest, sought to eliminate a man they saw as a threat to their power. The soldiers, hardened by routine violence, treated Jesus' suffering as entertainment. Even his disciples, paralyzed by fear, abandoned him in his darkest hour. These actions weren't specific to those individuals. They mirrored a universal reality. Sin is not just their problem, it's ours. In the face of humanity's rejection, the cross stood as a paradox. While it represented humanity's greatest failure, it also became the means of reconciliation. Jesus' death was not an accident or a defeat, but rather the realization of a divine plan to permanently address the issue of sin. This is where the concept of redemption comes into play. Redemption signifies the act of rescue or purchase, a release from servitude. In ancient times, the term often referred to the payment of a price to free someone from slavery. On the cross, Jesus paid that price, not with silver or gold, but with his own life. God's justice requires us to address sin. We cannot simply ignore it. A world where wrongdoing has no consequences would not be truly good. However, God's love refuses to leave humanity in a state of hopelessness. The cross is where these two aspects of God's character meet. By taking the penalty for sin upon himself, Jesus fulfilled the requirements of justice while extending grace to humanity. His death was not an act of defeat, but one of unparalleled love, bridging the gap that sin had created. He broke the power of sin in that single moment, making redemption available to all who would receive it. The crucifixion's message is timeless. While the events occurred nearly 2,000 years ago, the struggle with sin and the need for redemption remain as relevant as ever. Humanity still wrestles with selfishness, pride, and broken relationships. However, Jesus' sacrifice continues to shine brightly, offering hope. Fear overcame Jesus' closest followers during his arrest and crucifixion. These were men who had walked alongside him, witnessed miracles, and heard his teachings firsthand. Yet at the moment of his greatest trial, they fled and hid. Peter, who had sworn unwavering loyalty, denied even knowing him 3 times. Their fear was understandable. The Roman authorities had just executed their leader, and they believed they might be next. But the aftermath of the crucifixion marked a turning point. The extraordinary events surrounding Jesus' death, the darkness, the earthquake, and the tearing of the temple veil began to reshape their understanding of everything he had taught them. His earlier prophecies about his death and resurrection, once confusing, now came into sharp focus. In the days following the resurrection, the disciples underwent a complete transformation. The same men who had cowered in fear became bold proclaimers of the message of Jesus. Peter, who had denied Jesus out of self-preservation, became a fearless leader, delivering a powerful speech on the day of Pentecost that led thousands to faith. Their encounter with the risen Christ and their recognition of the divine plan at work in his death and resurrection drove this radical change. The impact of these individual and group transformations rippled outward, influencing entire communities and shaping history. The crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus became the foundation of a movement that defied cultural, social, and political barriers. What began as a small group of followers grew into a global faith that has touched countless lives over the centuries. The narrative of transformation transcends historical boundaries. The same power that turned fearful disciples into bold leaders, a hardened centurion into a witness of faith, and a mocking crowd into a repentant community continues to work in lives today. It challenges us to confront our own fears, doubts, and failures, and invites us to embrace a new way of living. Transformation begins with recognition, acknowledging our own brokenness and the truth of who Jesus is. From there, it moves outward, changing not only individuals, but also the relationships, communities, and cultures they touch. The crucifixion of Jesus Christ is one of the most depicted events in art and cinema, and for good reason. It is a moment of unparalleled spiritual, historical, and emotional depth that continues to resonate across cultures and generations. Films exploring this profound event have ranged from reverent biblical epics to modern adaptations that seek to make the story accessible to contemporary audiences. Released in 2004, The Passion of the Christ was a global phenomenon that brought the story of Jesus' crucifixion into sharp focus. Directed by Mel Gibson, the film portrays the final 12 hours of Jesus' life with harrowing detail, immersing viewers in the physical and emotional agony of his suffering. With dialogue entirely in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, the film sought to capture historical authenticity, drawing viewers into the world of first-century Jerusalem. One of the most striking aspects of The Passion is its unflinching depiction of the brutality of crucifixion. Gibson's intention was to confront audiences with the raw reality of Jesus' sacrifice, compelling them to grapple with the weight of the event. While the graphic violence sparked controversy, it also underscored the physical cost of redemption, giving audiences a visceral understanding of the price paid for humanity's sins. The film's release was met with a mix of acclaim and criticism. It grossed over $600 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing R-rated film at the time and a cultural touchstone for millions of Christians. However, it also faced accusations of anti-Semitism and excessive violence, prompting broader conversations about the responsibilities of filmmakers when dealing with sacred topics. The 2016 film Risen, directed by Kevin Reynolds, approaches the story from the viewpoint of a Roman tribune tasked with investigating the resurrection. This detective-style narrative offers a fresh lens through which to explore the crucifixion and its aftermath, focusing on the doubts and realizations of an outsider. Similarly, streaming platforms have embraced biblical stories with modern storytelling techniques. 2019 saw the release of The Chosen, a popular crowd-funded series that takes a multi-season approach to the life of Jesus, culminating in the crucifixion and resurrection. By focusing on the lives of Jesus' followers and their struggles, the series humanizes the events, making them relatable to a modern audience. This approach allows viewers to see the crucifixion not just as a historical event, but as a deeply personal moment that transformed individuals and communities. Moreover, the crucifixion's relevance extends beyond religious boundaries. Its themes of injustice, forgiveness, and resilience resonate with audiences of all backgrounds, making it a powerful narrative tool for exploring the human condition. This is why filmmakers continue to revisit the story, finding new ways to interpret its meaning for contemporary viewers. The depiction of the crucifixion is evolving along with technology. Virtual reality and immersive storytelling could bring audiences closer to the events, offering a more interactive and personal connection to the story. At the same time, filmmakers must navigate the challenges of staying true to the theological significance of the crucifixion while appealing to modern sensibilities. This story is the foundation of the Christian faith, shaping theology, culture, and individual lives. It has been a source of comfort for those seeking meaning in suffering and a wellspring of inspiration for those striving to overcome their own brokenness. The cross, once a symbol of humiliation, has become a beacon of victory, reminding humanity that even in the darkest moments, grace can prevail. If you are enjoying this story, consider supporting us with a super thanks. By contributing, you're helping us continue sharing powerful content. The story of the crucifixion reveals the tendencies of humanity, the inclination to reject what challenges us, to prioritize comfort over conviction, and to seek control rather than surrender. Yet it also reveals the boundless nature of God's mercy. God met those who nailed Jesus to the cross with words of forgiveness. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." This act of grace is as relevant now as it was then. It invites us to recognize our own shortcomings, not with despair, but with the assurance that redemption is always within reach. In many ways, the crucifixion was not an ending, but a beginning. It marked the culmination of Jesus' earthly ministry and the fulfillment of ancient prophecies. But it also heralded the dawn of a new covenant. The resurrection that followed transformed the cross from a symbol of defeat into one of eternal hope. The core of the Christian faith is the belief that Jesus' sacrifice has made reconciliation with God possible for everyone. For believers, this truth offers not just comfort, but a call to action, to live lives that reflect the love and forgiveness they have received. Thanks for watching. Join our community by subscribing to the channel. See you in the next video.